I am turning 40 this year. Jeez. I don't know how to feel about this. There's a part of me that's doesn't think age means anything at all and doesn't really like register in my mind that that's a thing. Then there's another part of me that's like, oh my god, 40 is like a big number. There's another part of me that's very grateful to, like aging. I like when people talk about aging as like a privilege, right? Like, this is a good thing. You get to experience years. And then there's other parts of me that are like, my life isn't what I want. I want more out of life. Like, what does this mean that you know, that I haven't necessarily created like everything I wanted by now, or maybe even some big things. It's all just like a mind fuck. Like, when I turned 30, it wasn't a big deal at all. I was like, okay, this feels the same as 20 in a way. Like, it was great. It was like the next level, the next step. Um, but something about 40 just feels weird. I'm like, what? I don't know how to feel about this. I think for multiple things, right? So I'll say this. Something I've decided to call this era for myself is it's not a midlife crisis, it's a midlife renaissance or renaissance. However one says that. I'm currently in England, so maybe it's renaissance. I can't say it any other way. That's how I hear it in my mind. Which is like like a creative, positive thing, right? And as I explore my identity, as I explore other ways of being in the world, I feel like that fits very well, that term. So this is not a midlife crisis, this is a midlife renaissance. 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 I like renaissance better. Okay, yeah, so 40. 40. I feel like I heard like family lore is that my father also had like a it's sort of like a reaction to turning 40 when he turned 40. So maybe this is just in my genes to be like, whoa, this decade means something really big. I don't know. So all of my 1986ers, what are you thinking about turning 40? What are you, or if you've already turned 40, or if you're turning 40 soon, how do you feel about it? What's going on in your mind? Do you feel like it has to mean anything? Do you feel that you've like accomplished a lot of things in the first 4 decades and you feel like very solid in your 40ness? Or are you like many millennials? Am I an elder millennial? I don't know. Like, millennials going like, we don't even know what adulting is. Like, we know, but like, it's a weird generation to be in, you know? I mean, I don't mind because, I mean, as my first video, I'm already exploring um, deconstructing traditional senses of lots of things. And so I think maybe it's an opportunity to deconstruct the idea of aging. And I actually on a different channel that when I had that channel going, I did this video on the social clock and how like society uses this idea of your age and time frames and certain milestones as like a way of sort of controlling the societal movements. I mean, not necessarily in a bad way. It's just a form of sort of forming societies in different ways. And so, for those of us maybe who are neurodivergent, like myself, or folks who didn't have the opportunity to reach certain milestones or whatever, or didn't want to. Maybe you didn't want to be married, or maybe you didn't want to have kids. Like, I'm not married, I don't have kids. I don't, I know I definitely don't want the kids thing, at least, in certain ways. And so, yeah, like maybe the pressure of the social clock in your culture or your microculture, right? Maybe you didn't mind that you didn't fit the social clock, or maybe you do mind. Like I would love to know, your experience. What are you thinking about? Then also, if you are also turning 40 this year, and maybe I don't know if you see this like years from now, even if you see this video in 2 years from now and you're turning 40 that year, you can still be a part of this conversation. That's the beauty of YouTube. Yeah, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking about? Is it a big deal? Is it a small deal? Is it a no deal? Is it just maybe it's also the sense of like the ritual of time frames. So like going into a new decade. Maybe there's something about that can be just really powerful. Like moving into a new phase of life or a new opportunity to claim whatever this decade is to you. I think that's what I'm doing with like the idea of midlife renaissance. Renaissance is this idea of claiming it as my own. Like what does 40 mean to me? If the world is insane anyways, so like who says I have to do what traditionally people have done in their 40s? Like what if it's mine? And then also on top of that, I wanted to sort of bring in as well this discussion around like those of us who come into our queer identities later in life, because that's a whole thing too. There's some people who understand themselves as queer when they're really young or in high school, or they had this sort of formative age time period of like understanding themselves, and then also getting acquainted with queer culture, or and because there's a whole discussion around that, like some people might be queer but they don't understand the culture, or they're not, there's a term now I'm forgetting. Anyways, and so what does it mean? And then I've seen other folks talk about like, okay, they come into their queer identity later in life, and that can feel, both liberating and amazing to be able to acknowledge that about yourself. And then also, you feel like, okay, but I missed out on, like, I'm having to catch up in a way. Or I'm having to, like, what does this all mean? And how do I engage with the culture that maybe people have lived their whole life in? And now I'm coming to it, maybe with that indoctrinated sense of, you know, heteronormativity and deconstructing that. So, and for me, I mean, I've known I'm queer for over 10 years, but I was still older when I came to that understanding. And also, even though I knew that about myself, I had a number of like partnerships with men. And so, like, in those cases, that sort of era, I felt like it was more like incognito queer. Like, I knew I was queer, I told them that, but it didn't really make a lot of difference for the relationship or for how the world perceived me, right? Um, and so yeah, I feel like now this next decade could be me being like very much more in my queer identity. I'm wanting to do that more intentionally, like, but being more involved in queer community, actually intentionally building those relationships, getting more involved in I don't know things. I'm still figuring it out, but yeah, I think partly that something that gets kind of in the way is that I'm kind of nomadic at the moment, traveling a lot. So I haven't like sat myself in a place for a time and really built community there. But over New Year's, which was a few days ago, I went to a queer New Year's Eve event, and it was part of my like commitment to myself of intentionality around my queer identity and living more into my queerness in this next decade and beyond. Of like, hey, I'm starting my year, even the first seconds of this year in queer community and celebrating with queer folks like myself and celebrating my queerness. And it was just really special. Um, yeah. So, midlife renaissance. What? Maybe you're not in midlife. Maybe you're some other time. But what is something that you are kind of inviting yourself to in this next phase, whatever that may be? Maybe you're stepping more into your creativity. Maybe you're stepping more into your learning period. Maybe you're going into a study of some kind. Maybe you're stepping into something like parenthood, or you own a dog. Now you're a pet parent. Yeah, I'm curious. Curious to hear about you, what's going on with you, and then, yeah, any thoughts about this whole idea of midlife renaissance versus crisis? Maybe it doesn't have to be a bad thing. That you can explore your identity at any age. And I think that's kind of the crux of it. Is this idea of exploring your identity at any age, coming into more of yourself, allowing this to be a positive creative experience, process of expression, perhaps. Yeah. Well, okay. I didn't have more thoughts than that in this moment. I just kind of wanted to touch on that today. And then soon I'll talk about more things. Also, if you saw our first video where I was exploring the idea of relationship anarchy, I also wanted to touch on the fact that I love the work of, and now I'm forgetting her name, other than Lee, Lee something something, which I will actually put in the description this time, because she had this really amazing presentation on the idea of relationship nihilism. So that was a whole another thing that kind of brought me back into this idea of really looking intentionally at how am I doing relationships, and what things can I deconstruct, what things can I question. And what's interesting is there's actually a term called queering as a verb, which is sort of like the proactive questioning of things. And instead of just taking things on just because they are the way they are, this is how we do it, right? That you're questioning like all sorts of things, breaking down constructs and things, and so that if you decide to engage with a construct of some kind, it's because you actively chose that, and it was from a place of choice rather than obligation, rather than tradition. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with tradition, but I do personally, especially as I have been focusing on this era of sovereignty, been wanting to engage with things from a place of choice, right? And maybe we should get into a whole discussion around consent and like self-consent and all that. Okay, so this will be fun. This is just the second video, so we got lots to talk about. Join me here as we continue on this adventure of life and exploring life together and questioning things and breaking down constructs to decide what really works for you. Yeah, all right. Tell me what resonated from this video and any of those other questions I asked you in the comments below. Join me here. And yeah, see you soon.